Just jumping in here quickly to let you guys know that I have recently created a Facebook group for listeners of the Live, Train, Perform podcast. So this private forum is the place to connect with other podcast listeners and guests, as well as to interact with myself and other coaches who have provided content for the Coach's Corner episodes. So in this forum, you can ask questions, which I can then answer in the group, or I can use them for episodes for my Q&A sessions, post relevant articles, you can share memes. The goal is to create a network of like-minded people so that everyone can interact with each other. You guys, the listeners, the audience members, can interact with a network of professionals in the fitness industry that have provided good quality content for the podcast. To gain access to this private group, all you need to do is leave me a rating and review. What this does is allows me to bump up the ratings, draw bigger names, bigger guests to the podcast for your listening pleasure. Once you've left a rating and review, take a screenshot of that, send that through to my Instagram at coach_Kobes, Kobes. Once you've done that, go onto Facebook, type in Live, Train, Perform. That group will come up, request access, answer the 3 questions, and I will grant you access. I am in the process of building out my online business. One of the income streams is going to be from the Facebook forum. So I'm going to be allowing 50 people into that forum for free. After that, it will be paid access only. So get in early, be one of the OGs. Thanks, guys. Much appreciated. Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome to this episode of the Live, Train, Perform podcast. I'm your host, Sean Kober, and joining me again is Jamie O'Donnell. Jamie, it seems like we only just spoke, mate.
It might be because we just did. Cool, man. Looking forward to having a conversation with you this time around. And yeah, man, thanks for having me on.
I appreciate it, mate. Just to give the audience a little bit of context, I did record a conversation with Jamie this morning about the journey through fight camp with Peter Yan leading into UFC 267, etc., etc. I was planning on getting to some questions for him. He's recently gone through a transformation, but that conversation went a little bit too long. I had to get off, had a couple of client calls, etc., etc. I was like, hey, bro, can we jump back on again? I know it's your Friday night in New Zealand. And he's like, yeah, man, I'll give you the time for sure. So here we are again. I really appreciate your time, man. For those that have been around for a while, they'll know Jamie from previous episodes. I was a guest on his podcast, the Life Livers Academy. When was that? March, April last year.
Yeah.
And then Jamie came on and jumped on the other side of the mic, and I interviewed him. And that was, man, to this day, that was probably one of my favorite conversations. And, you know, there's a number of takeaways that I got from that episode. And, you know, it's something I've actually gone back and listened to that episode a couple of times, and I've had some really great feedback for that. So always appreciate your insight, mate.
Cool, man. Yeah, looking forward to chatting, man. And we did the conversation before. I could have literally spoken to you for another few hours because it was such a fascinating journey. But we'll see how we go this time. We'll flip it around and see how we go.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure some of the same principles will tie in, man. We'll probably do a lot of crossover in the conversation anyway. But, mate, one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on to have this conversation was because you've recently gone through a quite dramatic transformation with yourself. So talk to me about what occurred during that transformation. Like, what was the catalyst for going through that transformation and how it's panned out? And I'm sure we'll pick up wherever the conversation goes.
Yeah, cool, man. Yeah, I mean, I guess for anyone listening, there's a bit of context that probably needs to be given because it has been like a huge transformation. And like from a health and fitness perspective, but I think when you think health and fitness transformation, you think weight loss. And, you know, people just look at before and after photos and it doesn't do any justice to the level of transformation that goes on behind the scenes. And to take it right back to the beginning and to give context to how the transformation and how everything sort of come around. Like in 2018, when we were in Thailand, which is where I obviously met you and spent time with you, towards the back end of that, I actually got home back to New Zealand very end of 2018, and I developed a skin infection, and it was called folliculitis. It was just on the back of my neck. It was like nothing too crazy, but it was persistent, and I sort of ignored it for a bit, and then in start of 2019, I ended up getting on some antibiotics to try and clear it up, and it kind of just ended up in the cycle of the doctor, it just masking the symptoms never actually treating the infection. But ended up in this continual cycle of kind of every 3 months going back to a doctor or whatever and just getting given another dose, and struggling, I guess, to get anyone to take it serious or to talk to me about any holistic side of things. And, I've been in or around the fitness industry for most of my life in some way, shape or form. So I've got a decent base knowledge, and I knew that it wasn't good for my gut health. And I knew that I should probably be looking at other alternatives to try and treat it rather than just taking antibiotic after antibiotic. And anyway, I naively just carried on, and I ended up in a cycle where probably like 18 to 24 months worth of antibiotics and different drugs. Ended up taking isotretinoin, and which is like Accutane, a very harsh drug, like fucks your system up, really not good for your mental health. And over that period of time, just my overall health declined massively, man. Like, I was saying to you off camera before, it was like chronic fatigue, almost. Like my gut health got to a point where it was so bad that I just had no energy. And when I say no energy, I'm a pretty high energy guy. Like I've got a pretty good attitude towards things. I generally walk around with a good energy and a positive smile, and I try and give a lot of energy to every interaction. And I was fucked, man. And it was starting to affect my mental health. I really found myself in a spot where I just almost didn't recognize the person that I was. And I had put on a little bit of weight. It wasn't like massive, but I was carrying a little bit of extra weight, and I was just battling. And
was there like one morning you woke up and you felt something was off, or was it like this gradual?
No, it was gradual, bro. It was over time.
Yeah.
And the tricky thing about that is that it's a slippery slope, because we're such adaptive beings that feeling shit becomes normal really quickly, and you don't realize that you're feeling shit. That's just become your quality of life. Yep. And I found myself, I've been in really good shape, periods of my life. I've done boxing. I've been super fit and healthy. I've worked in the industry. Like, I know what it feels like to be in peak shape. So I had something to refer back to. But even then, it's still a slippery slope, and you'd still find yourself just accepting that quality of life. And it was, to be honest, the catalyst was I knew that I was being a dick to Steph, like my partner. I knew that I was just shorter. I knew that I was just shorter with her. Like, I was just less tolerant, and it was because I was so exhausted. And there was a period there where I sort of had, I guess, a moment or two where I looked in the mirror and was like, you're carrying on like a dick. Like, you're actually not who you want to be. And either you're allowing yourself to do that, or you need to reach out and get help because something's not right. And I knew something wasn't right with the health. I knew that I had enough understanding to know that my gut health was probably in poor shape. Probably had like candida overgrowth, probably had imbalances in my microbiome, and obviously gut-brain connection's huge, right? So I knew that probably the battle and the fogginess mentally was probably to do with that. I mean, I run a business, I work as a coach, I give a lot of energy to other people, so it was paramount for me to be able to have the energy to give to people to keep things going. I was trying to do boxing, I was trying to train for a fight, and I kept getting injured. Things were falling apart, man. And I guess that was the background. And I'd been to 5 different general practitioners, and I just kept getting given a different type of antibiotic. And I ended up going to a specialist, getting to a dermatologist. He put me onto the harshest drug. We literally had to sign a waiver around suicide. And he said, it affects your mental health. And I was already, battling, not super bad. I don't want to dramatize it, but I was flat compared to what I normally am. And
of course, man. As you said, your whole quality of life has been affected. Your health is affected, your energy levels, your productivity, your relationship as well.
Exactly, bro.
I just want to pause there for a second and discuss, everything you just said there before we go further. There's a lot of stuff that I want to unpack there, man. And for the audience, I think it's important for them to understand that, antibiotics, whilst they can be great at times, they shouldn't be, something that you rely upon, because what antibiotics do is they kill off all fucking bacteria, good and bad. And, we've got something like 2 kilos worth of bacteria just within our gut, man.
Yeah.
And, all of that plays a part. Even bad bacteria as such, like plays a part in our immune system, this bad bacteria then creates an inflammation response, and the immune system goes, hey, we need to deal with these things, and, sends out these killer cells and blah, 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 kills off this bad bacteria. And then, it's created these antibodies. So if you experience that again, then it can deal with it. So that's, bad bacteria can be a good thing, right? But then when you take these antibiotics to kill this overgrown bad bacteria, you're also killing off the good bacteria, which, as you said, like is directly connected to the brain. It's connected to, all of our systems, man. And, what I think it's like 80-90% of our immune system lies within the gut. So if your gut microbiome is in dysbiosis or imbalanced, then that literally affects everything else in your body, man.
100%. Yeah, exactly. And it was, I mean, like looking back on it, it was crazy to look at the way that you were prescribed before diagnosis, if that makes sense, from the doctor. So it was like, literally, it wasn't until recently when I connected with a really good integrative nutritionist, like a really top level person called Katie Boyd. Katie, if you hear this, thank you for all your help. You're amazing. But she's an awesome person.
Katie's definitely going to hear this, mate. You're going to send her this link.
Katie Boyd, to be honest, she forced me to go and get tests to work out exactly what was going on. So there was a couple of different tests that I did. And she was like, you just have to go and get them, because for me to understand what I need to do for you from a nutritional supplementation perspective, I need to understand what the imbalances are, what's growing, what bacteria is there, what's not there, what's been destroyed. And so she got me to go and do a stool sample test, and there was a breath test that I had to do as well, and a nasal swab. And on the back of that, she got all the data that she needed to understand what was actually going on internally. Now, she was the first person to do that. I've been to specialists, dermatologists, doctors, the works, and had been prescribed antibiotics. But you, when you were speaking to these guys, like it wasn't addressing the underlying issue. Like the skin specialist is just addressing the skin. Yeah, it's not like, hey, what are some of the underlying concerns that may be affecting the skin? 100%. But I had raised that with them. I'd been like, I know that it's to do with the gut. Like I need to treat my gut, and my concern is that everything that I'm being prescribed is actually destroying my gut. So I'm going to end up in this cycle where I can't get off medication. And they were going,
and that's exactly what happened, bro.
That's exactly what was happening. But I got in a place where I was just stuck with it, and like you couldn't go off the medication because you'd have these horrific flare-ups and painful, and like it was not a good situation. And so Katie was the first person who got to the bottom of what was actually going on, so that she could then create a protocol based on what she knew was happening. But it was like in that moment I was like, wow, we've just spent 2 years literally just prescribing without diagnosing first. And I was like, holy shit. And like you say, don't get me wrong, I'm not bagging the medical industry or antibiotics. There's a time and a place in an acute situation where that stuff's crucial. It saves lives.
100%, mate. That's what Western medicine's so good at, man. It's treating these acute issues. Like if you're in an accident and you need to get your fucking leg amputated, okay, it's very, like Western medicine's very good at that, okay. But if you've got like this is the difference between East and Western, right? Like the Eastern medicine is like, hey, let's like give them these fucking herbs and spices and all of these different compounds that, keep everything optimized beneath the surface. And, maybe it's not so good at treating acute issues, okay, but it's typically pretty good at chronic issues, whereas 100%. Western medicine is good for acute issues, but not so much at chronic issues. So this is where like that blend of East and Western medicine is, that's the approach that needs to be taken, man, because everything's a fucking tool. And yes, there's going to be times where you need, medication to deal with whatever it is, okay, and, address these issues right there, right then. But then that should only address those issues so you can get to a place where you can then start addressing the underlying cause. And this is where the integrative nutrition, functional medicine comes into play, man. We need to look at the system, the organism as a fucking whole, because everything works together. There's not isolated systems, they're integrated systems.
Yeah, man. Exactly. 100%. And I mean, that's a big learning for me, It was interesting because I set out initially really just to lose weight and get in shape. I was like, I need to get my energy levels up. I need to clean my stuff up.
When was this, sorry?
Like just once I found myself in that place where I was so fatigued on the back of probably 18 months on the antibiotics and stuff. And I was like, I need to do something. But in my head, it was what I know, which was get a decent training program, get your body working properly again, clean up your nutrition, And in the process of that, I was like, and also like pay attention to your gut health and try and rebuild your gut health. But so I reached out and got help from Katie, and I also hired a coach, a guy called Jack Boone, who I met in Thailand, funnily enough. And he helped me with a training program and with my nutrition and stuff. And to be honest, the turning point was the intake that was asking for help from him. And just admitting where I was at, because I've always been like a pretty fit, healthy person, and like part of my identity is around being a high performer and trying to give lots of energy to other people and be ambitious and all this type of thing. And to find myself in a situation where maybe I wasn't all of those things, asking for help and admitting where you're at was difficult. And probably the big turning point was actually reaching out and just saying to Jack, mate, I want to lose some weight, I want to get fit and healthy. And sort of thinking that he would take a surface level approach and go, cool, man, let's jump on and have a chat. And he gave me a questionnaire that took me fucking 2.5 hours to fill out, which was everything from my sex life to my sleep to my fucking, like, what I have for breakfast to, like, mate, emotional health.
That right there is a sign of a fucking good coach, mate.
Yeah.
That is going to ask those hard questions, man.
It was everything,
for me,
man.
That's a filter for me, bro. Like when I send through my initial consultation email to my clients, man, like that gives me an indication of how invested they are in their own journey, man.
I'm not joking when it took me like at least 2 hours to fill it in, probably. And like it was so in depth. But it was a tool for me where I had to reflect on where I was at.
100%, and that's that email is or that questionnaire. It's a snapshot for the coach of where you're at, but also what's led you into that point, what your expectations are. But it's also a reflection for you.
Oh, massively! It's a huge mirror.
It takes bro. Exactly. You need to look in the mirror, man. You need to ask those questions. I've had the same thing where I've had clients go, man, like, thank you for that email because that got me thinking about things that I typically wouldn't even think about, I hadn't even considered. And when I was filling out that consultation form, I was connecting the dots myself.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And as someone who has a good base level of knowledge, I did know what to do. For the most part, like, don't get me wrong, there's levels to the shit, and the people that I hired have 10 levels above my knowledge, but I did know roughly what to do, but I also had to admit that my energy levels and stuff were so low that I actually couldn't put, like, I needed help to put, I needed the accountability. I thought about it, and there was a few people, you being one of them, to be fair, where I was like, who do I respect the most in this area that I wouldn't want to let down? Like, because you get good at letting yourself down over time, like, and particularly if you go down a path like that, it's like, I've said I'll get my health together and haven't quite got it together, and you become good at negotiating with yourself, man. And like,
it's that slippery slope, bro.
100%. And I just found myself on it, and I got myself relatively early on it, but I did find myself on it, and I was like, Jack had been doing some specific stuff around skin health, so I reached out to him, and I knew that he was really good on the weight loss transformation. That was part of it that I wanted to do. And anyway, he just straight off the bat drew a line in the sand, and he was like, fuck, man, we got to look at everything. Like, what time are you switching your phone off at night? How much screen time have you got? Like, are you getting in the sun first thing? What's your circadian rhythm like? Like, just everything. And I all stuff that I knew, and I was like, yeah, okay, you're the right, like, we're on the same page with it. And I just surrender, like, kick my ass, tell me what the fuck I need to do, write me the blueprint. I don't want to think about it. I don't have the energy, but I want to do it. And I'm because in those moments you realize the level of energy that you have dictates the quality of your life, full stop. And you can't you can't have a quality of life without a high level of energy and vitality. And like, sometimes, I mean, it was a good reality check for me because I found myself without it, and then all of a sudden relationships that were good were starting to suffer. Business that I loved, I was not enjoying anymore. Like, everything, all the stuff that I found joy in, I was getting less joy and less fulfillment and everything from, because my energy was so low. And so that was like a thing where I was like, I need to focus on rebuilding my energy, and I need to get my energy levels up so that I can get back to how I want to live, And literally, he just drew a line in the sand and was like, there's no fucking around. Like, we're going to cut pretty much everything out of your diet. We're going to get back to like an elimination diet to work out what's going on with your gut. We'll start slow in the gym, and we'll rebuild like a nice functional program that you can build yourself into, because it had some injuries and stuff. But he was like, there's no compromise. And you were in the back of my head, because when we did our podcast together, you said you'll assess a client and their like level of engagement and commitment, and you'll say, you know, and you did that ladder thing, and you spoke through it where you're like, are you, how committed are you? And someone will say, I'm 10 out of 10. You go, cool. Well, you need to sleep for 8 hours. You need to eat this. You need to drink 3 liters of water. You need to exercise 6 times a week. Then they go, I don't have time for that. And you're like, right, you're at an 8, not a 10. And then you'll say, but you need to do it. And then, you're at a 7. And then you really get to where they're at, and they're actually at like a 5.
Yeah.
And Jack was just like, line in the sand. This is what we need to do. And you were in the back of my head, and I was like, how committed are you? And I was like, fuck it, bro. Like, we're in. Let's go. Like, I've got it. I can't carry on like this. And so, yeah, man, I got started on the weight loss journey. And to be fair, like, simple stuff, right? Like, massively increase your protein. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to pause there for a moment, because I think there's some takeaways for the audience as well. You know, you obviously have been in the industry for a long time. You understand those fundamentals that, you know that you need to tidy up your diet. You know that you probably need to manage your time and your stress levels a little bit more. And you need to get into the gym and maybe change the way that you're training, et cetera, et cetera. So you only know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know, right? And for 80%, 90% of people, when they simply start doing those smaller things they know is right, then that's going to take care of most issues. But then they get to a point where you're like, all right, well, I'm doing these things, and you probably were already doing those things as well, because it's become a habit. Okay, maybe some of those things had slipped a little bit, but then you're like, all right, I need to start dialing these things back in. I need to start tightening the screws. You do that for a couple of weeks, and you're like, there's no change. Fuck, all right, then maybe there's something else going on beneath the scenes that, I can't see behind. I can't see behind the curtain. So maybe I do need to employ someone who is operating at that higher level, that can break through the bullshit, that can make, give me these testing protocols. Because if you're not testing, you're guessing, right?
100%.
And then that determines, what the protocols are going to be. And again, you're addressing what the underlying cause is, not just what the symptoms are.
100%, man. And I ended up hiring 2 people. I hired Katie to help me with Jack, to his credit, is also very good with gut health and everything. And he'd done me a really good protocol. And by the time I connected with Katie, he'd actually got me this far along the track, right? And I had moved from step 1 to step 3, and then I connected with Katie, and she really went all in on the gut health stuff, and got me tested. And when she got all the tests done, so like I said, I did the stool sample, did the breath test, did the nasal test. She then got, she was like, oh, okay, well, these are the infections. You're resistant to every single antibiotic you've ever taken.
Yep.
And there's one form of antibiotic that you're not showing huge resistance to, which is alicillin, which is like a natural garlic extract, basically. And she was like, so there's no wonder that you've just taken all these antibiotics and nothing's happened, but no one ever tested you to see what you're resistant to, and you've literally been taking the antibiotics time after time.
Exactly. So once you've taken that test, then she can go give you that allicin or whatever it is and go, hey, let's use this to get things under control, and then let's start addressing those underlying issues, man. Yeah.
So, but there was two people, and it was like earlier we spoke about Peter, and when how he pulled together experts in different fields to create his team to go and win the world title, and it was like Jack filled an amazing role for me around accountability and like lifestyle coaching and the gym and the nutrition side of it, and Katie filled the in-depth supplementation and actual protocol around healing the gut and trying to rebuild some of the good bacteria that was missing and trying to eliminate some of the bad bacteria that was overgrown. And the thing that, and so during that period, bro, I'm trying to articulate it as the best possible way, because there's 2 ways to this. There's 2 sides to this transformation that are important. But with Jack, I ended up over a 12 to 14 week period losing 11 kilos, putting on some lean muscle, obviously changed my diet drastically, and stripped right back, eliminated everything. Literally pretty much, I won't say carnivore diet, but not far off it, like a few veggies and high level meat and like good butter and limited carbohydrates, but from good sources, and pretty basic, back to basics, and a high level of accountability around it, making sure that I was doing what I said I was going to do every single day. And then taking the supplements. And I had like a really good transformation, but in the process of that at the beginning, I knew I needed a circuit breaker, because when you go to do something and you know what you've got to do, but you still genuinely don't have the energy to do it. And I was like, I need a circuit breaker here. And I went and brought a chest freezer and put it in the garage and plugged it in and got it to fucking 2 degrees and turned it into an ice bath, sealed it all up, turned it into an ice bath. And I was like, I'm going to just commit to like 2 to 3 weeks of ice baths every morning with Wim Hof breathing. And I'm going to try and use that as a circuit breaker to like just give me this little boost of energy to just fucking snap me out of where I'm at, to give me the momentum in my days to do the nutrition and to get to the gym and stuff. And so I started implementing ice bath and breathing every day. And it was a circuit breaker, bro. Like, it snapped me out of the place that I was in. It increased my energy quite drastically. Obviously, like, your vascular health and everything has a huge impact on actually how much energy you do have. And anyone who knows anything about cold exposure and breath work knows that it's a pretty big part of generating a good level of vitality and energy throughout the day. And that was like a circuit breaker for me, which gave me the momentum to implement what Jack had given me. And because I'd created that momentum with the ice baths and stuff, I then like really hit the nutrition hard. And I did a 4-month period where it was like there was nothing. There was no gluten, no soy, no fucking like nothing.
Bro, I love that. I love that. Like, that for you was one of those cornerstone habits. And those cornerstone habits are, those foundational pieces that then have a flow-on effect along, through the rest of your day. And you're doing that first thing in the morning. You're getting in the ice bath. You're giving yourself that cold exposure. That's upregulating your sympathetic nervous system, putting you in a fight or flight. That's releasing cortisol, adrenaline. That's getting you fucking ready to kick off the day. But then what you're also doing is focusing on your breathing whilst your sympathetic nervous system's upregulated. That breath work, slow, controlled, deep breaths, that allows you to then create calm within the chaos, and you're actually driving the parasympathetic nervous system whilst your sympathetic nervous system's upregulated. Then that's going to carry over to, I get out, I feel good, man, like my blood's flowing, I feel amazing, I've just done a little bit of breath work, I've done some mindfulness, I'm fucking cold, but I'm feeling good, I'm refreshed, I've, produced a heap of cortisol and adrenaline, I'm ready to get after the day. That's bumped up your energy levels. Guess what? Now you're going to make a fucking good, healthy breakfast. And now you start writing down the things that you need to do, and then you're like, all right, schedule. Then you get your training in and blah, blah, blah. It's like that flow on effect, man. I think that cornerstone habit is extremely important for people to think about. And it's going to be different for everyone, man. That cornerstone habit might simply be getting out of bed and putting your shoes on. Yep. Or, whatever, getting home from work, and instead of, walking in the door and sitting on the couch, maybe it is walking in the door, getting out of your work clothes and putting on your training gear and walking 100%. Back out the door. Like, that cornerstone habit needs to be different. It will be different for everyone. But the important thing is, again, the principle, man, of finding that habit that then has this snowball effect and, creates higher quality of life throughout the rest of your day.
100%, man. And I knew there was something intuitively I'd done ice baths a little bit in the past, and there was something intuitive about it, because I just knew that without the ice baths and that like shock, I wouldn't have the momentum to take the nutrition seriously. And I also knew that because it wasn't just a weight loss transformation, I was trying to heal myself. I also knew that I couldn't get away with giving 90%. I knew it had to be 100%. I knew it had to be 100% every single day, or there was no, if you put in 80%, you get zero result in that situation. Sorry, go on. No, and it's just like, it's one of those things where like a lot of the time, even before, when I found myself in that situation where I put on a bit of weight and just my energy levels were low and everything, I was still doing 80% of things well. I wasn't unhealthy by any means. Like, I was training every day still. I was forcing myself into the gym. I was eating 80% healthy, I would say. And like, I was still healthier than most people that I turn and look to, but 80% was giving me 0% because I needed 100%. And it was like, for me, I knew that doing something like extreme, like the ice baths and the breathing and committing to that, was like a mental example of going in 100%, and then the nutrition and everything on the back of that became quite easy. And so the cornerstone habit thing that you've raised is super important, but the way that I framed it up for myself was like, what's the one needle moving thing that I could do that would give me momentum? Because I'm a big believer in like momentum. And I think in anything that you try and do, anything that you try and tackle, if you can push the rock forward initially, you're away, right? And so for me, it was just thinking about that. I was like, what is going to be like the needle mover, the thing that just snaps me into that first bit of momentum so that I can then carry it on? Because I trusted that once I got into the swing of it, it'd be fine.
Yeah, bro. I always say to my clients, mate, like it's much easier to maintain momentum than it is to gain momentum. So what this means when, you know, if people are listening at home and they're like, oh, I need to create some change in my life, then, you know, it's going to be fucking difficult the first couple of weeks. The first month, the first 2 months, you know, most people fall off their new habits or their New Year's resolutions after a couple of weeks, right? Because they try and do everything at once. And like the point is, don't do everything at once. Like, as you said, what's the one thing that's going to shift the needle in the right direction? That is going to be a cornerstone habit that then has a flow-on effect elsewhere that you don't even need to think about. You just do because you understand it makes you feel better. And that's a great point as well, is like, you know that you were doing the right thing 80% of the time, but you knew also, because you have good awareness within yourself, that 80% wasn't doing or wasn't serving you, man, and there was something missing, you know, for the average person. As you said, like, so many people don't understand how good they could be feeling because they've just live with...
They've just accepted a shit quality of life. Like, that's
exactly,
become normal.
Man. Exactly. Like, I know that's great awareness, because I know when I'm not feeling great about myself, things are, you know, energy levels are a little bit low. I'm feeling a little bit tired. You know, my productivity is a little bit down. Maybe my sleep patterns are a little bit off. I'm like looking at everything in my life. I'm like, all right, what's slipping? Like what, you know, I look back at some of the best times of my life, man, where life was going really fucking well. My energy levels were high. I was really productive, really creative, you know, good relationships. I was in a really good mental and physical space. And I'm like, what was I doing then? And then I'm like, all right, well, I'm not doing that. I need to get back to that point. And I don't need to do everything at once, but what's one thing that I'm going to do right now that's going to shift that needle in the right direction? Is there anything you want to add to that?
No, you touched on something that was important that we sort of brushed over, but it was like, you don't know what you don't know. And like, I think sometimes having a level of knowledge can also be a curse, because you kind of feel like you have enough to get by when really you actually need help. And like, I knew, like, from a weight loss perspective, I knew what to do. I know how to count macros. I know what food groups are good. I know what to do in that sense. But when it comes to gut health and like the intricacies of fully understanding good and bad of bacteria and the infection that I had, and that, like, that shit was way above my head. And so I had to hire help there. I had to get someone who was a specialist in that area who could really help me. And I think you touched on it, and you said, like, you don't know what you don't know. And if you find yourself coming up against a wall where you're not making progress, because that's what you're measuring, right? Are you progressing or are you not progressing? And if you're not progressing and you're doing the same thing over and over, you know, that's the definition of insanity, is what they say. And it's like, but how often are people sitting in that cycle for years? And I caught myself sitting in that cycle for maybe 3 to 6 months, maybe not even 6 months, but like 3 to 6 months. And I was like, the fuck, man, you got to ask for help. Like, this 6 months will become 12, which will become 18. And
100%.
It is going to be so much harder. And so, like, I don't know, if you're listening to it and you're trying to make progress in an area and you're not, like, maybe just look, and are you being vulnerable enough? Have you actually reached out and asked for help in the right areas? Because not the easiest thing to do, but fuck, if I hadn't have done it, if I hadn't reached out to Jack initially, I'd still be right. I'd still be in that same place, which leads
probably
to the
even
next...
worse off.
Oh, worse off for sure, but which leads to the next part of that thing, which through the testing that Katie got me to do, I got the test results back and she got the data back and she sent them through to me and she said, hey, like, awesome, I've got all the data that I need. I know, like, this and this and this about your gut. She sent me the full breakdown of everything. She said, but there's a marker which is for colon and stomach cancer, which has come back. The acceptable rate was 4 and I had a 10.4. And she was like, you need to go and get that seen to. Like, we need to get a colonoscopy and eliminate the fact that there might be colon or stomach cancer there.
This is where the acute response comes into play.
And I was like, oh shit. And I'd had like quite bad, like, gut issues had got worse over that kind of 12-month period. And I'd been, you know, dialing in my nutrition with Jack, and I'd I'd really made some progress around gut health. I didn't have the same level of pain. But my brother's got chronic Crohn's, so I had thought, shit, I might have Crohn's disease,
or some other form of autoimmune disease.
Yeah, or something going on there. And so, that was kind of what triggered it. I'd seen him go through his journey over 5 years. Horrible to watch him in and out of surgeries and stuff. And I was like, the moment I started getting gut stuff going on, I was like, I've got to fucking change my shit. I'm not going down that path. But then Katie came back and said, like, yeah, you need to go and get a colonoscopy, and there's a don't freak out because it could be a false positive or whatever, but it's a pretty accurate test, and it's come back very high on the cancer markers. And I was like, oh shit, okay. So I got that. I'm trying to think when that was. It was a few months ago now, like maybe 3 months ago, and I sort of went, oh okay. And I was just starting to organise to try and get into the doctor to get the colonoscopy, and we got into a snap lockdown in New Zealand, level 4. Can't leave your house unless you go to the supermarket.
Fuck.
Can't get medical attention. You can't get procedures done. Sorry, you could do an online thing with the doctor
Elective
or whatever.
procedures.
Yeah, but like any kind of surgery or anything like progressing something like that forward was out the window. You couldn't get into specialists. You couldn't get anything done. And we were in a lockdown for, I don't know, I can't really remember the time frame now, maybe 4 to 6 weeks. And so 2 days prior to going into lockdown, I just got told, oh, you've got a positive cancer marker. And now you're like isolated in your house and you can't leave and you can't get help with it. And I was like, oh, fuck. So this weird mental journey that you go on where you're like, oh, fuck, I might have stomach cancer, and then you're like, nah, I don't have stomach cancer, and all the positive self-talk comes in, and I'm pretty mentally strong. I've been through a lot of adversity. We've talked about that in other episodes. I know how to control and regulate my emotions and my mental stuff, and I was probably almost too good at it at times, and so I actually was pretty good throughout that period, but people around me were starting to worry, like my family. Steph, my partner, she tried to act like it wasn't getting to her, but like I could see that over a 4 to 6 week period sitting there where I've potentially got cancer was playing on her mind a fair bit. And on top of that...
And that's like, you're pretty good at... I'm the same, man. Like, I'm quite good at compartmentalizing things and managing my emotions, but then, it doesn't really hit you until you see it affecting other people. And then once it starts affecting them, then it starts creeping into, affecting you.
Yeah, totally, man. And I'm not going to lie, like there's obviously this... there's periods where you allow yourself to feel it and you're like, oh shit. And maybe, allow yourself to feel those emotions. And then there's times where you have to switch it off. Like we were in lockdown. I work with a lot of small businesses. It's how I get paid. Like I do coaching and I help people in that sense. And like the whole country had just been put into lockdown. All my clients were like, their businesses were on the line. So I need to step up and deliver 10x what I was delivering and be on my fucking game for all of my clients. And I've also got to deal with my own shit. And so there's something weird that happens in times of chaos like that where like I weirdly enjoy it. Like I think it brings the best out of me. Not that I want to go seeking it out too much, but like when shit does hit the fan, I know that I'll be fine. And so compartmentalizing it exactly like you said, I was like, okay, day 2 of the lockdown or whatever. And I was like, okay, I genuinely can't get seen or get any answers on this for at least 6 weeks probably. So that's what it is. Like, accept that that's the outcome and like come to terms with everything that could mean and like get yourself there genuinely, not fake. Get yourself there. Mm-hmm. Talk about it, whatever, but get yourself there. And then also understand that most of the time you worry about shit that never eventuates. And so what's the worst case scenario? Wrap your head around the worst case scenario. Okay, take as much time as you need to do that. And then understand that worst case scenario will probably not play out. But if it does, you're there. And then it was like...
But you've already accepted it, man.
Yeah, to a certain degree.
Important. Yeah, I think that's an important part of this, mate, is like, I've spoken about this before about my time in Afghanistan and, having those thoughts running through my head of like, maybe this is my last patrol. Maybe we'd go through certain areas and I could see that we're getting channeled and I'm like, fuck, man, maybe if I was Taliban, I'd be placing an IED up there. Yeah. And there was these thoughts of like, maybe I'm not going to survive this patrol. Maybe I'll lose my leg. Maybe maybe I make a mistake, lose my life, or, I fucking do something that, or I'm, get mutilated or whatever and it changes my life forever. But I accepted that, right? And like I'd written my will 3 times by the time I was 25 years old. And once I'd thought about that it became a reality. And I was like, right, man, like I'm fucking grounded. I know that the reality is that my life could be taken any moment. However, I am going to have a say in how this is going to unfold. Yes, I can see that we're getting channeled in this area, but instead of going that direction, I'm going to maybe choose a different route, or I'm going to, I'm always going to have some control and some influence over how things play out. And that might not necessarily be like the reality, but that's how I perceive it. And once you perceive it like that, then it makes a huge difference to your mindset and your ability to control your emotions and be able to operate, understanding that life is finite. So
massively, right? But
yeah, I think it's
your
extremely
situation,
important. Are you familiar with Stoic philosophy?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, man, and that's pretty much like control the controllables. And
Exactly.
don't worry about the things that are outside of your control, because then you start creating this anxiety around things that may or may not happen, right? So, one of the Stoic philosophies is understanding that death is coming to everyone. And once you look at that, if we draw like a timeline, like I'm 36 and you're around the same age, right?
33, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So if we draw a timeline and go, the average age lifespan is what, 80 years old, for example.
Younger than that even. Worldwide, it's like 75 or something.
Yeah, exactly, man. So like, let's draw that out and go, all right, average lifespan of a male, 75 years old, right? If I then look at my timeline and go, right, I'm 36, like I'm pretty much halfway through my expected lifespan, right? Once I look at that, I go, fuck, man, like I don't have that much time left to achieve the things that I want to do, right? I'm not going to stress about that. It is the reality, and I'm going to live in that reality and go, all right, if I understand that I'm halfway through my life, like what choices do I want to make on a daily basis that is going to allow me to live a life of fulfillment and contentment that I can look back on, on my deathbed and be like, I'm really fucking happy with how I lived, man. And this is again, tying back into the Afghanistan thing, mate, like I think about this quite often, and I know it sounds probably a little bit morbid, but I quite often think like, if I got news like that I had cancer and I knew that I only had 6 months left to live, I'd be like, fuck yeah, I'm living my best life for the next 6 months, man. Right. Knowing that I've already, achieved so much in my life, and I'm very happy, I'm very grateful for everything that I've done. And if I died tomorrow, man, like I'm ecstatic, bro, with what I've done, what I've achieved, and I'm happy with my life and my contribution to society. I think that's really powerful, is looking at, the big picture and understanding that, this is your life. You only get one chance.
Yeah, just perspective, bro. Like, there's two things you touched on there that I think is valuable to pick up on. But the first thing was what you were saying about when you're facing something like that. And it's, what's the alternative? Do you, okay, you in Afghanistan, we're like, oh, I could get shot. Okay, well, yeah, you could. And it's very real. But does it help you perform at a better level and get better outcomes after having that thought if you continue to think about it? Or are you better to shelve it and go somewhere else and compartmentalize? Now, in that lockdown situation, I was like, holy shit. And then I was like, hang on a minute. Every area of my life could fall apart in the next 4 weeks if I allow myself to be consumed by that. I could lose all my business clients because I'm not fucking present. I could, everything, my relation, the whole thing, by just allowing something that isn't even real yet to consume me. And that's what you're talking about with Afghanistan. You're like, okay, well, that threat's there, but if that consumes you, you're fucked.
Yeah, man, and that bleeds over into everything else. That affects everything else, because
it affects everything.
It's creating anxiety. It's creating different emotions. It's affecting your energy. It's affecting your decisions, man, ultimately. Yeah. And those decisions are what is affecting your quality of life.
Yeah. And so when you understand that, I'm not saying it's easy, because it's not, but that is a choice to either let that consume you or to not let that consume you. You just make a choice. And saying it's too simple, because there's a whole lot of emotional stuff that comes with it. But really, actually, if you've just been blunt and honest, you have a choice and you decide what you're going to do and how you're going to respond to the situation. And one response will get you a better outcome. And so you choose the one that's got a better outcome and you pursue it. And so that was one point. And then the second thing was perspective, because you talked about perspective there. And I had this really strange moment, bro, where I got, by the time we came out of lockdown, I was really lucky. I had private health insurance that I'd taken out earlier in the year. And so I was able to get straight in with like a top specialist. He kind of said, I don't think there'll be anything there at your age, but we'll do the colonoscopy and gastroscopy just to be sure. And I went in and they found 10 polyps. And he was like, holy shit, like not what I was expecting at all of someone in your health and at your age. And so they got all cut out and then biopsied and they were sent away. And I was waiting for the biopsy results to come back at this period of time. And I was driving through town one day and I don't know, you just have these moments where you're just reflective when that stuff's going on. And like I found myself in a weirdly calm state throughout the whole thing and in a really grateful, blissful, beautiful, like one of the best mental spaces I've ever been in my life while all of this was going on, which is, I can't really explain. It just happened and it just was okay. And I was driving through it. Yeah, I'd accepted it, but it was like there was this, what's the word? It's like there was a peace that came with that, you know. And I guess it was acceptance. But I was in this really peaceful state every day, and it wasn't. You know, when people try and create peace for themselves, they go and meditate, and they like get stressed because they can't meditate properly, and they're trying to create peace. And it's like there's no fluency to trying to get this peace in your life, because sometimes you're fucking not in a peaceful state. Like there's not a peaceful. What's the word? Like there's
like undertones.
There's seasons, right? And sometimes life is fucking chaotic and it's not peaceful at all. And other times it's really peaceful. And other times it's emotion. There's all these different emotions that go on. But I just found myself in this really peaceful season, and there was absolute chaos going on around me in lockdown and from the results that I'd had, all sorts of stuff. I was driving through town. I was going to visit my brother, and I got to an intersection, and I literally, as I came around the corner, there was a fire truck pulled up and an ambulance pulled up over the curb, and I was like, holy shit, what's going on here? Anyway, I pulled up to the intersection. I got stopped at the intersection and blocked off, and I looked to my left, and there was a guy my age, like 30, getting CPR on the side of the road, and I was like, whew. And they were like fully pumping him, like trying to bring him back. His mates were standing there in shock. It was like 1 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, and he just collapsed on the footpath. And I got stuck there for probably like 5 minutes. Just literally, he was 2 meters from my car door, and just had to watch him get CPR. And anyway, I eventually got let through the intersection. I went to the supermarket and did a small shop. So I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. Got in my car. It's the only way to come back round. Drove back through that intersection and got stopped at the intersection again. They were still working on him. And it was like 20 minutes later, and I was like, shit. And then as I was stuck next to him, they called it, and they were like, he's dead. And I sat in the car and was like, I was going through my own shit, trying to process the fact that I was waiting for my cancer results. And given the fact that I just had 10 polyps cut out, and that was really unusual, and that I had a positive cancer marker, by that stage in my head, I was like, there's probably quite a high chance I've got cancer. And in that moment, I was like, what would that, like, what's my worst case scenario is that I get like a diagnosis of colon cancer, which is pretty treatable. I'm young, I'm fit, I'm healthy. Like, I'll have to work through it. It's not ideal. I don't want that to happen, but like, I'll deal with it. And I was like, what would that guy have given for a terminal diagnosis? Like, he just got taken like that. Like 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, out with his mates. I don't know exactly, but I think they'd just come out of the Thai restaurant that was there. Bang. What would that guy have given for 6 months more? To be told you've got 6 months more, to go back home to his family, to whether he connected with his kids, if he had kids, his mates, to do the shit that he wanted to do, to just show up and get the most out of the next 6 months. Like, he would have given anything to have that opportunity. And so it just gave me this like amazing perspective where I was like so grateful, even if in the next week a cancer diagnosis came through. I was like, I didn't get hit by a bus today. I didn't drop dead on the side of the road. Like, this is a win, you know? And then everything just started coming, like, my perspective shifted. And, well, it was sort of already shifted, but everything just came through that lens. And it was like comparing down instead of comparing up. Because I think so often in the world now, we compare up and we look at what everyone else has got that's better than us, or everyone who's in a better situation than us. And we feel like we minimize our situation, and we rob ourselves of so much happiness in those moments. And that's what social media does. But you can always compare yourself down. There's always someone in a worse situation than you, and we never really do it. Like, we never really fully express gratitude for where we're at because we're always trying to get to the next place. And it was like something like that, where I was just like, that guy would have given anything to have 6 more months. And I was like, and someone else who gets a terminal diagnosis today will have given anything to not have a terminal diagnosis. And someone else who got a diagnosis would give anyone to not have one. And I was like, there's just scales to this shit. You just find yourself somewhere on the scale, and you can choose to compare up or to compare down. But at the end of the day, your perspective is all that you've got. And bro, it changed. Like, I don't know, it was like, I can't really explain it, but like something just shifted for me. And I was like, everything is fine, like no matter what goes on. And
just sorry, mate. Sorry to interrupt there. Like, I was just thinking about my NLP training. Like, something they talk about is being associated and being disassociated. And associated is basically like that subjective view, and then disassociated is that objective view. And it seems to me like that moment was like a switch for you, where you went from being subjective, thinking about, you know, just your life, to then that objective view where you're kind of looking at your life from bird's eye view and being like, oh man, fuck, that's just given me so much of a different perspective.
Yeah, I think so. I think I was already there. Like, I'd already got there because I understand enough to be able to get myself there, but it was a tangible example of something that reflected it back at me, and I was like, oh, that's what I'm going. That's why I'm peaceful. Like, but then it gave me like a tangible example, and I was like, it all just clicked and it made sense. And I was like, that's maybe why the peace is there, because you're looking at things through that lens, and then you just look at everything around you, and you're like, imagine if everyone was just looking through a similar lens, where rather than being ungrateful for everything that's going on, we were fucking grateful for all the blessings that were there, because they're fucking there. And also like the emotions, because I drove to my brother's house after that, and I sat in his driveway, and I had this weird moment where I just sat in his driveway, and I just had this 5 or 10 minute period, I don't know how long it was, 5 or 10 minutes, where I sat in his driveway, no one was around, and I just sat in the car, and I just had this like intense, emotional, happy, grateful moment where I just sat, like it was almost like meditation. I just sat in the car, and I just thought about everything that was going on in the world, in my world at that point in time, the sick, the cancer stuff that was going on, we had business stresses that were happening as well. We would just come out of lockdown. The house that we were living in had just been sold. There was all sorts of shit that was going on. I was like, my life is chaos right now. And I was like, and I'm just loving, I'm just grateful for the experience of it. And it was like, all the emotions that you feel are just emotions, and we label them good or bad. And we rob ourselves of like 50% of life when we don't embrace all the fearful emotions, or the sad, or all the other stuff, which there's real beauty in if you embrace it. We block it out, and we tell ourselves and label that as being bad, yet 50% of our lives is experiencing that shit. And I had these times where, like I say, I don't know exactly how it came about, but like all of that stuff, there was like beauty in it. And I don't know, I don't want to get too deep and too wacky because I might lose people with it, but there was beauty in it. And I was like, hang on, you can just live like this. You can just, there's beauty in everything, whether something today when I walk out of here after doing this interview and something happens, it might not be what I want to happen, but like there is beauty in it, and like life is always happening for you, not to you, if that's the way you look at it. And in a weird way, having that skin infection initially for me, which bugged me for years, like for 2 years at least, and it was really like I hated having it. It potentially saved my life, because it was through the testing for the skin stuff that I ended up discovering the polyps. And to finish the full loop, when I got the polyps back, the specialist sat me down and said, I need to connect with the person who got you to do those tests, because the polyps that we removed were the cancerous type, but the test was so good that it picked up and gave you a positive test result before they had turned. And he said, wow. I don't know about that test, and I need to learn from this person who got you to do it, because he said, I've never, like, that's incredible that it did that. And she saved you from having to go through cancer, because that would have been cancer. And in a funny way, a full circle moment, gratitude for the fucking skin infection that I tried to push away for so long and that I was so annoyed at and everything. That shit, had I have never got that, man, I would have had polyps in my stomach that would have turned cancerous. And had I have never got the skin infection, I would have had full-blown cancer, and who knows what would have happened.
Wow, man. That's an incredible loop, bro. And that's such an amazing insight from yourself. What I want to ask is, if you hadn't have gone through that journey yourself, if you weren't waiting for those results and you drove past that guy who, essentially fucking died on the footpath with his mates, man, like, if you weren't in that mindset and you had experienced that same situation, would you be thinking about it the same way? Probably not.
Probably not. And I've had people, like I've been at the sea, like when me and Steph both were, when someone drowned, like it was probably like 5 years ago, and we saw this, like went through that whole thing. I've seen shit like that, and it shakes you for a bit, and it does. You can't help but be shaken by something like that. But it was different perspective because I was facing my own, I guess, I don't want to be too dramatic, but I guess you are kind of facing your own mortality at that point. And there's something different about that. It like shrinks everything down into this really succinct, like, gift of perspective. And that's what you had when you're in Afghanistan and you're facing that stuff all the time. It's like you're forced to face that stuff, and you're grateful for everything that comes from that point. Like, I then was told that, so just to finish the health loop, like, I was told that they got it before it had turned and they'd been removed, but to have 10 of them, there's a genetic disposition, and we're doing testing at the moment with my family, but there's a genetic thing where you're more susceptible to these types of serrated adenomas, I think they're called, which is the type of polyp, which have potential to turn cancerous more than the other ones. And there's a predisposition genetically on one side of either my mum or dad, where we've got a higher chance of developing that, and we wouldn't have known about that. So even through that, like, my family's now getting tested. I don't know what the results of that will be, but like, there might be other people in my family who find out that they've got this shit that they can take control of it because I got a skin infection and ended up like, so it's just like this loop and this lesson that, for me anyway, and maybe for people that are listening in, but there's this loop where, like, the saying, like, nothing in life happens to you, it happens for you. I've heard that so many times, but like, it's fucking true. But all that is a perspective shift, and anyone can access it. And I don't know, man, like, your mental health and your quality of life and your appreciation for life and your appreciation for the people and the things in your life is fucking 10x when you make that flip on perspective.
100%, man. Mate, there's so many questions that I want to ask you, but I think that's a really good place to start wrapping up the episode. In saying that, I do want to continue chatting to you. So if you are interested, I'll cut this conversation here. I'll drop this as a separate podcast episode, and then I want to go back and talk about a little bit more about the transformation process, if you're happy to do that and if you have the time to do that.
100%, man. Sounds good. I guess just in this episode, like, just to close that off, because we talked a lot about, gratitude, perspective and all that type of thing. But I guess at the core of it is, like, thinking about the quality of life that I've got now as well. Not just from a mental perspective, but I talked early on about it and you touched on it a lot, was just the level of energy that dictates the quality of your life. And I just think, like, I know there's a lot of people who are in the health and fitness space or around trying to better their health and fitness who listen to this podcast, but man, we measure our bank accounts, we measure the fucking scales when we step on them in the morning, we measure so much dumb shit in our lives, but I don't know if there's a more important measure than just honestly checking in with your level of energy and vitality and, like, how you're actually feeling, because that dictates your mental health, it dictates your physical health, it dictates the level of connection and energy that you can put into your relationships, it dictates the level of energy that you can put into your goals, it dictates the fucking level of care that you have for yourself. And we don't really talk about it or measure it enough. And it's not put on the pedestal that it should be put on. Like, we fucking measure our physical appearance over how we feel, and we measure all this other stuff. So one of the big lessons for me is, like, just throughout this whole process is really paying attention and putting the value that it deserves on the level of energy that you have from your body, and then basing your food and your training and your relationships and everything on how can you elevate that level of energy to get to that next level. Because everyone in your life, every person, every relationship, every interaction, every bit of food, everything that you do is either subtracting or adding energy to your life. And I think a lot of the time, without realizing it, we end up where we're in these situations where what we're putting in our body and who we're hanging around is detracting our energy massively, and it leads to a shit quality of life. And don't know, man, we're worth more than that. And I think if there's one thing, I think people should pay more attention to that.
Mate, that was an absolutely brilliant passage, man. I'm fucking inspired by that. And, to tie everything in, put a cap on that is like, right at the start of this episode, we were discussing, your transformation and how initially it was like, I want to, clean up my diet, put on a little bit of muscle,
weight, yeah.
drop some body fat, and that was what your initial, target was. But then as you went down that path, like you realized that there was so much more to it. And the big takeaway point for me is like, when people do start focusing on the health of the organism, then you do end up getting those other results, those aesthetic results, performance results indirectly. So I think that's a great point, man. Yes, it is hard to quantify some of these objective measures because that's what these subjective measures, because that's what, looking at your hair, your skin, your nails, digestive system, energy levels, productivity, sex drive, emotions, mental health, etc., etc. Like, this is all subjective, right? Like, you can't put a number on it. When you go to the gym and you lift 100 kilos for 10 reps, like, that's an objective measurement. And like, that's much more easier to quantify, but it's far more important in my eyes to find ways to quantify those subjective measurements.
Yeah, totally, bro. And you can do it, right? Like, it's just that we're not used to doing it. Like, you can, like, journaling is a great way to check in with where your energy's at, where your mental space is at. You can come up with assessments for yourself and rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 every night if you want to when you go to bed, and like what level of satisfaction you got out of your day, what your depth of relationships were like, what your level of energy was like, how inspired you felt. You can rate all of that shit. We just don't do it. We rate all the dumb stuff, and we don't pay attention to all the stuff that makes us happy and equates to like a good quality of life. And to know, it's just throughout this whole experience, it's just painted some of that a bit clearer for me, and I guess made me value myself enough to really hold myself accountable to some of that stuff. So I don't know, man, in a strange way, it's been a crazy journey, bro. We won't carry on about it. I think there's a lot of lessons in there, but it's been an amazing journey. But I guess the point is that I could have been asleep at the wheel through a lot of that and not taken any of the lessons out of it. And by initially checking in and really just wanting to better my energy and really like paying more attention to how I was feeling, I think out of that level of awareness that I had to have to check in with my body, I ended up picking up far more lessons throughout this whole thing. And it's just been like a really 360 degree transformation, mentally, physically, emotionally, and hopefully something that I'm sure this perspective will stick with me from now on. So
yeah. Amazing, mate. When we get back on, I want to discuss the discipline required to go through the transformation, but also I want to go through the elimination diet process for people listening as well, mate.
Sounds good, man. Look forward to it.
All right, cool. Let's get back on in 5 minutes. This episode was brought to you by Swiss 8, which is a proactive mental health program designed by veterans, initially for veterans, that has been pushed out to the wider community, that allows you to structure in and schedule their 8 pillars of health and wellness, including nutrition, sleep, time management, discipline, fitness, personal growth, mindfulness, and minimalism. This episode was also brought to you by Be Spunky, which is a male hormone optimization supplement that I've been taking for about 1.5 years, and I absolutely rate. It is a TGA listed nutraceutical, meaning that it's made from all organic produce to help you manage and optimize your stress levels, which in turn increases your ability to improve testosterone production levels naturally. Use the code COBES10 at checkout for your 10% discount. All of those links will be in the show notes. If you got some benefit from this episode, please make sure you pass it off to your friends and family. I'd appreciate any shares on social media platforms. If you tag me or if you share it to your stories, make sure you tag me so I can share that as well. Any 5-star ratings and reviews are much appreciated. Much love, guys. Peace.